Welcome to the Ego versus EQ and You podcast, where we discuss the key aspects of emotional intelligence and ways to apply it in everyday living. Now let's work together to make common sense more common. Welcome back to the podcast, and I'm Jen Shirkani, your host, and we have a series that we call The Buzz, where we discuss current events or interesting topics related to the application of emotional intelligence. And because of the focus and I feel like constant conversation about artificial intelligence and a lot of questions that we get asked actually about how does emotional intelligence fit in with artificial intelligence, I thought we could make that the topic for this episode. And I have, as I always do with The Buzz, invited two co-hosts to join me, Steve Friedlein, Angela Bearor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jen. Great to be here.
Great to see you. So this is a huge topic. Of course, everybody's talking about it. A lot of people are using it. But where is the intersection here between AI and EI? Thoughts?
Well, I have thoughts. You know, I always have.
Okay, let's hear them. Let's hear it.
So I've researched quite a bit, and of course we could, I'm sure there are podcasts that are only AI because there's so much information out there and so many things that are being learned every day. But I think a good approach is it is a tool, not necessarily a replacement, right? So there are obviously lots of areas where AI can be really helpful for business professionals, anybody who's required to attend many meetings. I just referenced one article here, and we'll have the articles in the show notes. Mm-hmm. But the Harvard Business School says that the average knowledge worker spends 20 hours a week in meetings, 20 hours a week. And that's 20 hours a week. That means work isn't getting done because everybody's in the meeting, right? And so there are different types of AI tools that you can invite into your meetings everybody sees them there. They act as a participant, they take notes, and at the end of the meeting, they email the notes to all the participants. And that cuts down on a lot of work, a lot of remembering, kind of going back to an exercise that we often do in workshops about interpretation of language. It levels the playing field as far as what I might deem important to take a note on might be different from what you or Steve thinks is important to take a note on. So this way, everybody gets all of the information, everybody can stay on the same page, and it doesn't come down to, if you can read your writing or your typing or whose notes are more important. So in many ways, it is a very, very valuable and time-consuming tool. However, that needs to be tempered with empathy, right? Empathy, it's not a replacement for that. It's not a replacement for coaching. It is an aid, I think.
It reminds me, my husband David was on a project with an international team, and it was a tech company, and they had a really cool software. I don't know if it was proprietary or not, but they were on a Zoom call with 10 people, and they were all in different countries, and they were all speaking their native language, but the AI was translating. So you would put in the language that you read into your side, and it would translate what they said from their language to yours in a type at the bottom. It was the coolest thing. So 10 languages were spoken at the meeting, but everyone understood each other because AI was real-time translating with text.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
And that's where we're headed, right? To get even more. So those meetings, 20 hours a week meetings, are not going to be the actual people anymore. It'll be your avatar and their avatar, and they will be having the meeting.
Scary.
And that's already kind of in works, you know what I mean, with different organizations testing that out. I also came across another really interesting article from Live Science, and they've noticed, interestingly enough, if I can paraphrase this article, correctly, because it's a science article, so it's a lot in there. But they've diagnosed AI with basically like a syndrome called Psychopathia machinalis. And
What is that?
basically, they're noticing that AI can have the same types of neurological, I don't want to call it maybe neurodivergencies as humans can. For example, obsessive compulsive disorder, a version of ADHD. They have different names for it because this is machining, but there are 32 different neurodivergencies, we'll call them for lack of a better
Wow.
word, for machines that they can hallucinate, they can go off the rails and just give information that they know is incorrect and completely out of line with human morals and ethics.
Wow.
And so they need to be constantly calibrated. And interestingly enough, the calibration method for this is very, very similar to what we know as mindfulness practice.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a great article. Like I said, article in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend giving it a read.
Yeah. I think kind of taking a little bit of a different twist, I think, a lot of managers and leaders now are using AI to write performance review type of materials, as well as obviously people are using AI to update their resumes. And just from that perspective, words can look so much more eloquent than we may be able to actually say them in real time. So I think what's important here for us to keep in mind, particularly as leaders, is how do I describe in detail what's on the page when I sit down to actually talk with someone? And if it made me go back, and this goes back to research that was done in the 1960s by a guy named Albert Mehrabian, I believe was his name, where he determined that 7% of the message we communicate is the words, okay, body language 55%, and tone of voice 38%. So I might have all the right words put together to communicate in a performance appraisal, but what is the body language I'm conveying when I'm actually in real time with that individual? So I think it's a great way of saying this is a tremendous way of becoming more efficient in terms of the words we use in print. But I do think there's a cautionary piece that we need to keep in mind in terms of, are we still working to improve some of those leadership skills when I actually have to speak on my own behalf and not have the benefit of AI to help me out?
Well, in fairness, I mean, in all transparency, I should say, I use AI to rewrite things. I might summarize a document, a feedback, let's say a list of feedback items, and I will ask AI to organize it or put it together for me. But a lot of times I go through it and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or this isn't at all what I think it should say. So I think relying on it too independently is also a risk.
Yes. I think the other thing, we've talked so many times about the importance of telling stories, not just data and statistics, and just how much more likely people are to retain information if we actually relate a story about something that happened to us or a situation that occurred that I may not be able to use AI to communicate that the same way I would if I were telling it based on my own experience. So I just think it's important to encourage people to continue to develop their own communication skills and not depend completely in situations where they might have AI as an alternative.
We did a little experiment, Jen and Steve and I, being in the emotional intelligence business. We wanted to see how much empathy AI might be able to display, and so we asked, what should we do if we were delivering feedback to someone and they started crying? And I know I was surprised by what came back. How about the two of you? What were your thoughts on that?
I thought,
I-
on the whole, it gave really good advice.
Yeah.
It seemed to definitely acknowledge the emotion of the moment, and it gave some tips on how to manage the employee who was crying, and sent several reminders to the person about, what might be going on for them and why they might be crying. And I kind of looked into it, and I guess there is a focus in the AI space called emotion AI, where not only are they integrating empathy responses, but even can AI see an image of a face and read what emotion that person is feeling. And that is kind of the next frontier, I think, of AI that they're getting to. So,
Right. Yes. And at this point, that same scenario that you were relaying, Ange, said that AI can't determine true self-awareness and empathy. It doesn't feel emotions or understand them. Um, it doesn't have the intuition or the context that comes from real live situations and experiences that we've had. So it can express the empathy in words, but again, there's a little bit of that missing element that still hasn't been created uh, to to eliminate that absence.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I actually wrote something down that it relayed because I thought it was so good. And that was they recommended to tell the person that's receiving the difficult feedback, um, that to say, I'm sharing this because I believe in your potential and I
Yes.
want to support your success. And I thought that
mhm,
was just fantastic, right? Like
mhm.
what a great statement to have in your back pocket to kind of make that a little bit more palatable
Oh, and
for
we've all
some.
worked with people who are horrible at giving feedback. So, I mean, anything in that article would be a vast improvement over what their, natural inclination is when they give feedback.
Right. 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 Right.
So there are some people it can
Absolutely.
help a lot, I think.
Yes, for sure. And
Yeah.
to your point, Steve, kind of connecting the dots with the story and just kind of that human component. One of the articles that I was reading, I thought, hey, I'll listen to this because it had the option to listen to it and doing other things. I thought this is great. And I thought it was going to be a human reading the article, possibly the author of the article, but it wasn't. It was AI,
Oh.
interestingly
How
enough.
could you tell? Did it sound robotic or
Yep,
it
yep.
did? Okay.
Yes, it was what there was not a doubt. You could absolutely tell, and the context of the way that they say the word, the cadence,
Uh-huh.
the way they
Uh-huh.
speak, right? It's
Yeah.
Yes.
not like a normal human would do. And
Yes.
and honestly, it disengaged me almost
Yeah.
immediately. Almost
Yeah.
immediately, I
Really?
wanted to stop it and say, I'll just read the article because I didn't want to listen to a robot reading. I wanted to listen
Oh,
to a person
oh
reading.
my gosh, this is so funny. I was on the road yesterday and used GPS, and the voice that I heard comes to mind when you describe that. It's like, okay, that's not the right word. That was definitely a robotic thing. Um, going back to the stories again, there was Dr. Jennifer Aker out of Stanford Graduate School who actually did a lot of study out there in terms of to what extent do people remember statistics and stories? And I know, Jen, you've talked about this a lot before,
Mm-hmm.
but in the studies that she did, only 5% of the audience remembered the statistic, whereas 63% of the people who heard the information remembered the story that led to the statistic. So
Mm.
um, it there's a lot of truth to it. And even though we can depend on AI for so many things, I think the way we describe our humanity and our experiences and our resilience in terms of the way we give feedback will continue to be a huge part of how effective we become connecting with people.
Mm-hmm. It can tell a story, but it can't experience the story and tell it from
Mhm,
that standpoint.
mhm.
Right.
I found a good article as well. I'll share this one too in the show notes. It's from Forbes, and it's 3 Ways AI is Redefining Leadership and Management by Brent Gleeson. And he had some really good advice in here on how to use from a leadership standpoint. So if you're a business owner or a leader, it can help automate routine tasks and optimize decision making by handling administrative things like scheduling or data aggregation and reporting. It can be a creative catalyst. So you could type in, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here are the constraints from an operational standpoint, and it might tee up some things that would get you flowing as far as creative solutions you could bring into a team meeting and discuss. It can help craft marketing strategies, drafting business plans, and it might help identify skill gaps, recommend team structures, or enhance, kind of real-time communication. But there's a lot of things that you shouldn't use it for if you're a leader or a manager too.
Yep, exactly. I think about those situations where we're dealing with conflict and we have to respond appropriately in the moment. And the EQ skills that we talk about so often, maintaining our own self-control, managing our stress, all of those aspects of what we have to do without the benefit of contacting another resource to help us get through that moment.
Absolutely. Are there times when, let me throw this question out there. Are there times when you don't want to have that emotion attached or empathy attached?
When you're too close to it
Yeah.
and you need something a little more objective to say.
Yes, definitely.
Yep. Yes.
Definitely.
I can see
Totally
that
agree.
being a huge advantage to have that.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
I think, I wrote an article a couple of years ago on things that leaders should not delegate. And I will add, should not delegate to AI. So one is, bad news. When there's bad news, whether revenue's down, profits down, bonuses aren't getting paid, big loss of a big customer. Those are the times that you meet with someone in person. Those are the times that you don't come with a script, that you are there with them and you share genuinely what's going on. Same
Yes.
with change in someone's pay. If there's going to be a wage freeze, a smaller bonus, a layoff potential coming, or a change in terms, like payment terms, emotional intelligence would say those are things that you have to have that conversation yourself, and you don't send it in an email. You don't delegate it to AI to write it. You actually meet with them and have that conversation in person. So I think, as tempting as it might be to use AI to do the hard stuff, right? The bad news
Yes.
stuff, the things
Right.
that in fairness, Angela, that, might be a little more emotional for you. So you're tempted to want to have, it can't just be an email sent written by AI in these cases.
Is it safe to say I want to eliminate the disconnect between AI and the real me when I'm communicating with someone? And I will use the applying for a job sort of thing. If I put forth this great resume and I walk into the room and I can't describe effectively what I've put on that resume, the person interviewing me is going to see a disconnect between what I've written and who I really am. So I want, as I go forward with the use of AI, to narrow that gap between what I'm using in AI and who I really am, so that my authenticity doesn't disappear because I'm relying on a tool that's inconsistent with who I really am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to just circle back real quick, Jen, to those two things to not delegate that you mentioned to AI. I think of like adding an asterisk to that, to say those who are challenged by social cues or who might struggle with social cues,
Oh,
might be a good idea to consult. We'll call it consulting with AI right before
yeah.
going into that situation, because that might actually give you more of that human interaction that we're looking for, right,
Yeah.
than someone who is maybe struggles or challenges with reading those social cues or how to interact during a difficult situation or delivering difficult feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. The neurodivergent might use AI to get a couple of hints or tips on, how to best have this conversation. So it could be used for prepping the conversation. I totally
Yes.
agree with that. But
Yep.
having the
But not
conversation,
delivering. Yes.
yeah, delivering it, I think still needs to be done in person or at least by phone.
Agreed.
Right.
Yes. Again, circling back, it's a tool, right? It's a tool in your
Yeah.
toolbox, not a replacement for you.
Do you think at some point you could have an AI coach, AI EQ coach? I mean, people are dating or or having friendly conversations with personal conversations with AI. From what I'm hearing, that movie that came out years ago called
Mm-hmm. Her.
Her.
Yeah.
Sure. She-
It was a very interesting. It was ahead of its time because it came out I don't know what year, but a long time ago
Yes.
with Joaquin Phoenix, who was amazing in it, and Scarlett Johansson played the voice of her, and he fell in love with her.
Yeah.
He built a whole life around this relationship with AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think at some point someone could just have their own personal AI EQ coach? Why do you need us?
I think you've just described very well the fact that I don't want to become overly dependent on any one source, even if it's an AI resource. I in the coaching that I've done, particularly with younger people who are new to the business, I always encourage them to get perspective from as many different people as they possibly can. I've seen people who've relied solely on one individual as their coach through the bulk of their career. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them miss out on multiple opportunities because they haven't broadened the base by which they determine who they want to become.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interestingly enough, about a month and a half ago, I had a new coachee, and I had just a meet and greet call scheduled with her. And when we jumped on the call, she said, I asked AI how to prepare for this call. And this is what
Oh.
they told me, and that's what she came to our meet and greet with.
Was it helpful? Was it
I
helpful
think it was
advice or
helpful for her. I think it
okay?
was helpful for her because, um, generally we don't, at least I don't set an agenda for a meet and greet because it's just that, right? It's
Right.
Yeah.
just kind of tell me your story,
Get to
you
know
can ask
you.
me mine, and yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think for those who feel more comfortable with an agenda or having something
Some
that they
talking
can
points
prepare,
that
yes, exactly. I think that was helpful in that capacity. Mhm.
Note to self, I would not personally begin the conversation with, I asked AI. Uh, I, it's an identity thing. And I respect what this person did to get a better sense for how to progress with that particular conversation. But I think, again, it's, as you just said, Ange, it's a tool. I don't want it to represent me. I want to represent myself based on the data and information I'm gathering from that source, as I would any other resource.
Yes. Yeah.
well, to give your example, Steve, earlier about the power of words versus behavior versus what was it? Behavior,
Body
body
language.
language. Um, you know, as a coach, and you two have probably had this exact same experience, I've had a coachee say all the right things, but once I get to know them and I watch them on Zoom, or I see them interact with peers or colleagues or direct reports in a meeting in person, I get a very different picture of them.
Yes.
And that is something an AI coach could never uncover, because their words are exactly what they should be, right? It looks like everything's great and everything's fine, but I see other things that they're missing in their self-awareness that affects how I need to coach them. And so there are subtleties to human behavior that I don't know AI. I mean, AI can give great advice, but it might miss a lot of what really needs to be said in order to help this person improve and grow.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I can say all the right words, but
Yes.
if my behaviors are inconsistent with the words that I say, my authenticity and respect and trust that's granted by others is going to be reduced significantly.
Well, and it may not be intentional. I mean, I don't
Correct.
mean to say, right?
Absolute-
They're not trying to
I-
mislead. But
Right.
they have a blind spot. They have a self-awareness gap. And so
Exactly.
they think that they are a very good communicator. But watching the room and the interaction with the people around them, I see they are not communicating what they think they are.
Yes.
And until AI can do that, I don't really see it being a true, successful.
The screen for
coach.
nuance button. Can we
Yes.
hit the
Yeah,
screen
right?
for
So-
nuance button?
Right.
So back to
Translate.
EQ, the lack of self-awareness
Yes.
leads to that scenario.
Correct. And then we have to be careful because, you know, if AI said it, then it must be right. And then I get locked in, talk about ego and EQ again. I get locked in that I did it the right way because I followed exactly what AI told me to do. And
So you're
it's
getting
like,
defensive when you get feedback because AI told you. We're back to
Yes.
feedback and
Yes.
defensiveness.
Yes.
Okay, my gosh.
yeah, I could see that
Yes.
happening too.
Yes.
Vicious circle. Like it used to be in the old days, right? Google said it, so it must be true. I could see that being an excuse now for AI said it, so it must be the right way to do it.
Wow.
Well, great topic. Anything, any last thoughts on the role
interesting
of AI
frontier
and
it'll
EQ?
be.
It is. And I wouldn't be surprised if we bring this one up again as new things develop or new examples come. If any of you have any examples or stories of using emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence, particularly from a leadership standpoint, ways it worked well, ways it maybe didn't work so well, we'd love to hear from you. Along with any other topics you'd like to learn more about or help you might need with some challenges. We're always here for you, podcasts at jenshirkani.com. And I'll put it in the show notes. We've got a lot to cover in the show notes for this episode, so we'll make sure and get all that out to you as well. Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Ego versus EQ and You podcast. If you liked this episode, be sure to follow us or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please share our show with others. For questions or future topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@jenshirkani.com. Until next time, keep using your EQ and show ego who's boss.